off the bat, and let's talk about making some decisions. So when we talk to customers in the last few years, we've worked very hard at migration, okay? So we've been very focused on migrating customers. So, how do I get from premise CUCM, or it could be a third party, another company, but how do I get from a premise-based voice platform, normally CUCM, to Webex Calling? And there's some similarities between CUCM and Webex Calling, and there's, of course, some things that are violently different. And so when we think about it, the logic of Webex Calling is built around what we call locations. So locations are the logical delineator. Now, a location could be just that. It could be a country. It could be a location within a country. It could literally be a campus environment that you have with multiple buildings inside that campus. It's all about kind of how you want to group your users together ultimately, because locations are tied to a lot of major things in Webex Calling. What do I mean? When we think of templates, when we think of device configuration, when we think of pushing specific functionality sets down to maybe an app or device, all those things are very much guarded by the actual nomenclature and the physicality of a location. So the first thing we do, and by the way, I'll go ahead and give you the CUCM name for that, it's called device pool. So if you think about device pool actually has a location inside of it, but locations in CUCM, remember, were only built around basically bandwidth management, right? So if you think about it, location is the device pool inside the Webex Calling cloud. So we got to think about our locations. Okay, that makes sense. What type of PSTN are we going to use? Well, we'll talk about that here in a second, but obviously there's a lot going on with PSTN ultimately in the cloud as well that we'll have to ultimately figure out. So the other thing too, and this is a big one for a lot of folks, how is my directory structure going to be set up? So CUCM was very limited, right? You could bring in multiple directories, but how many SSO or IDPs could you integrate with? That many. So it didn't matter. If you were a company that acquired 5 other companies and you needed to look at 5 different SSO platforms to authenticate 5 users, could you do it in CUCM? Nope. You had to use an external product, right, outside. We fixed that in Control Hub. So there are some great things around that. Control Hub also supports all the other cloud IDP platforms. Just until recently, 14 SU3 CUCM was the first version to actually support Azure Active Directory. We didn't have Azure Active Directory, which is the most common SSO platform now in the world. We didn't even have that support because CUCM was built off of legacy LDAP capability, right? Legacy SAML 2.0 requirements. The cloud is much more powerful than that. Ultimately, devices. Do we have a lot of Cisco devices? Well, they work with the cloud. We'll talk about devices too. And then, as I mentioned before, the other thing that we also talk about, I realize I'm here in Europe, so I don't necessarily beat what we call the 911 drum real hard over here, but if you are a European company with locations in the US and Canada, there's some laws that you have to deal with, and we'll talk real briefly about that today. So let's talk about PSTN ultimately here. So the nice thing about cloud and Cisco Webex Calling particularly is you got multiple options for ultimately getting your PSTN. So the first thing that we always talk about, and this only really makes sense, frankly, for maybe 15 to 20% of our customer base right now, is we do sell a calling plan. Cisco is a phone company now. We have pretty decent coverage in Europe. There's a couple countries we probably could be better in. We're always working on it. By the way, I'll tell you at the end, we made an announcement. We're finally adding Webex Go to a few countries here in Europe. We're announcing it here this week, which is really great too. But ultimately, Cisco calling plan. So think of calling plan as very simple. You pay $3 a month, you get a DID, and you get unlimited calling. Cisco calling plan. But of course, that doesn't work in an environment where you might have 20,000, phones in a factory that no one uses. You don't want to pay $3 a month, right, for a phone in the factory to be used once every month. So maybe this does or doesn't work for you, but we do have Cisco calling plans. Now, one of the other things we do have now, though, is our connectivity into our cloud-connected partners, or what we call our CCP partners. So there's a variety of partners that can service you across the world, and effectively, this allows you to effectively receive PSTN audio through Cisco's cloud, so no physical gateways or any of that other stuff, right, that you have to manage, and they can provide you PSTN, and then, as I like to say, it just magically shows up in the cloud for you to use. These are companies like NTT, Intellipeer, Call Tower. There's about 18 of them right now. We're working, of course, with other service providers constantly as well to get this up and running. And then the last option, which of course most customers also do, is just simply what we call local gateway. Local gateway, as you know, you have an existing SIP trunk, E1 PRI, whatever. You want to literally take that and swing it to the cloud. You bring your PSTN with you. We can create a trunk over the internet, right? It's all over the top. And you can basically do this. And this is a requirement, by the way. Local PSTN is a requirement in some of those regulated countries, right, that has laws about the whole calling thing, like our friends in India and China. So if you want to deploy there, you have to use local gateway, those kinds of technologies. But local gateway is there, and we are still adding roughly 6 to 7 locations a month, right? 6 or 7 more actual localities a month. Like I actually know this slide is a couple months old because I know we've added about a dozen more countries in Africa in the last couple months. So we continue to add more and more capability around our local gateway support. But if you really kind of look at this ultimately, like I said, premises PSTN, you can do that in about 110 plus countries now with our calling plan capability. Like I mentioned before, the Cisco Cloud Calling Plan, so Cisco PSTN, available in a variety of different countries. It's interesting to see there'll be a country you'll think Cisco's got to have calling there. Maybe we won't, just for whatever the locality and the location reasons are. And then, like I said, Cloud Connect for Webex Calling, that's our cloud connected partner organizations. And then you can actually look at all of these. If you go to help.webex.com, just physically go down to PSTN options, and it will list every one of our cloud connected partners. It'll list what countries they're available, so on and so forth. Now, let me explain why this PSTN kind of does matter, because we actually have something now. This is something that actually sets us apart from the other cloud providers. You can pick and choose by location what PSTN option you want. So I don't roll in and say, it's all or nothing. You can say, hey, in Europe, I have my headquarters in Europe, Justin. I have a SIP trunk from Orange, and I've had it for 30 years, and we got a contract. Great. But you know what, Justin? Going to the U.S., the last thing I really want to do is deal with any of those local U.S. providers, because they're all a bunch of mean people or whatever the case is. I want to buy my PSTN in the U.S. from you. Hey, no problem, I can do that for you. Better yet, in Australia, you know what, Justin, in Australia and Asia Pac, we have a relationship with NTT because they're everywhere. So I want to use NTT, which is a cloud provider, in my Australia and my Singapore locations. No problem. So the cool thing is about what we can do is you can literally pick and choose by location what PSTN option you want for that, ultimately, for that location. So if you look at my locations, I could have maybe 3 locations in, let's say, Germany. Okay? They're going to use my local gateway. Now, they might be different locations, but they can actually use a shared resource. They can use a shared SIP trunk through a gateway if I wanted to, or multiple, if that's the case. And that gets them in. And maybe I have that connected even to my existing CUCM, right, as my transition happens. Ultimately, like I said, maybe I have a location then in the UK and Ireland, and maybe a location in Japan. Well, in the UK and Ireland, once again, it's a small location. I got 10 or 15 people. Really don't want to deal with the whole gateway thing. Hey, Cisco, can you sell me a few phone numbers? Sure, no problem. Do that for you right now. And then, like I said, in Japan, maybe you're used to using KDDI or NTT or somebody like that, right? And you want to continue to use that, but you want that brought in effectively from Cisco's back end, right, through our back core SBC infrastructure. Well, you can go with the cloud-connected PSTN option, no problem as well. So these are the flexibilities, and when we look at designing and you think of PSTN, this is an opportunity. This is the biggest thing I hope you take away from me today. A lot of times in the past 20 years, and I'm a CUCM person, by the way, to my core, okay, that's my background. But a lot of times I like to say that we used to kind of kick the can down the road. Oh, we'll do that upgrade. We'll figure that out. We'll worry about that later. When you move to the cloud, whether you're moving to multi-tenant, whether you're moving to dedicated instance, whatever you're moving to, let's fix all the things we should have fixed now so that you can move forward. And guess what? For the next 10 years, you don't have to worry about anything. Because ultimately, we do not want to take your problems from your premise and bring it to the cloud. It's not a very good thing. If we can fix things now, I never did E164 numbering. I never did this. I had variable extension links at my sites, and I always thought about fixing it. Came across a customer yesterday. I'm using star to dial between sites. But some sites can, some sites can't. My directories don't work. Guess what? That all sounds like something we should fix right now as we move users. One disruption, right? One disruption for our users. So that's ultimately what we're looking at from a PSTN perspective. Real quickly, I want to make sure you understand the logic behind premises PSTN, because this is something that has expanded heavily in the last couple years in how we actually do this. So we actually follow a very similar metric to the way CUCM does routing. So we have effectively trunks. So trunks can go to gateways, right, or SBCs. Those can be actually put into route groups. So once again, you can have high-low from a failover perspective, location to location. You could figure out a form of toll bypass. All of these things can be done, and we support this metric inside Webex Calling. And then we take it to the next level. We actually have dial plans. And once again, this is a very Cisco thing and not a very Microsoft Zoom RingCentral or 8x8 thing. We have the ability to do traditional translation, modernization, as well as manipulation of digits the same way you could in CUCM, we can do it in Webex Calling. We actually are adding individual translation capability in a location, by location, physically here, in another 2 weeks. What does that mean? Maybe every one of your sites, you dial 100 to get to the security guard. That was easy to do in CUCM, right? Created an extra partition per site, slap that in that partition, manipulate it on the back, or better yet, the simplest one I can give you, dial 0 for the operator. But guess what? It's a different operator at every location, right? We actually have that capability. It's coming in multi-tenant. It'll be released here in 2 weeks. It's in beta today. So these are the kinds of things we're doing, because guess what? There's one thing here at Cisco, good or bad, we owe you a bunch of technical debt. You're used to using our platform. So you come to my new platform, guess what you're going to say? Hey, Justin, I could do it over here. Why can't I do it over there? I think it's kind of funny, by the way, when people move to Microsoft and they don't ask Microsoft for the same things they're asking from us. That's a whole nother discussion. But I will just tell you, we recognize the main things that you're using on CUCM, and we've worked very hard and diligently to bring those functionalities into Webex Calling. And we just continue to close gaps. We're at about 95%. We've done a lot of assessment. I can assess the CUCM. I have a piece of software I can run against it. I can come back and I can tell you within 5 minutes the things that are going to be difficult for you in multi-tenant and the things that aren't going to be difficult for you in multi-tenant. And so those are the kinds of things we worked really hard from a migration perspective. So let's talk real quickly just about users and identity. Now, the interesting about users and identity, I want to tell you, is that, of course, we are now built into what we call common identity, and common identity is the engine inside Control Hub. So Control Hub, of course, is that configure it all platform, right? Meetings, messaging, and calling, and contact center all exist in Control Hub. I'm going to show you Control Hub here in a second. But Control Hub is where it is. Now, when we do users and identity, we're actually doing it for all Cisco applications. If you're only deploying Cisco Voice, that's fine. No problem. But we still set up the identity inside the Control Hub capability, bringing it into common identity. So once again, if you're ever going to do SSO, let's do it first, not last. Okay? We support all the different SCIM and external SSO applications. So if you're an Okta family, if you are running Azure Active Directory, we can do automation from those SCIM capabilities into it. So we can actually auto-create accounts, auto-create capabilities, auto-assign phone numbers. I mean, you can automate a significant amount into Webex Calling. It's pretty powerful what you can do. A couple of things you need to do. You need to claim and verify your domain. If that's not something you've heard before, basically you're telling Control Hub and you're telling Cisco that you own justin.com. By you saying that, we know that we can create things for you and not necessarily worry that I'm spamming your email and all these other things, because you've basically established to us using a DNS TXT record, right, that you own that domain. So we're going to claim our domains. Effectively, I like to always tell people, if you have another Webex Control Hub, delegate accounts out of your primary Control Hub to that Control Hub. What does that mean? Whenever I set up a Control Hub for somebody, I delegate my Cisco account access to that Control Hub. Do you know why? Because if I bork the SSO integration, I have a back door to go in and uncheck that box and try again. So strongly recommend you create a back door. If a back door literally is you creating a free account on the platform with your Gmail or I was going to use like AOL or something really old, but we won't do that. But use another account to create a backdoor for yourself, okay? I also did a presentation in the virtual library. I did it in 2022. You're gonna say, man, that's old, Justin. It's 2024. Yes, it is. Guess what? The process hasn't changed. I did a virtual presentation. If you're interested, go in the library. And I did a presentation on how to integrate your Control Hub with either Microsoft or Google for full support. It literally takes 20 minutes to do either of them. So if you want to set up SSO from Google, go for it. You want to do Microsoft SSO? No problem. Simple and easy to do. If you want to see someone do it, you can read the documents. If you're a reader, great. But I know most people are the YouTube generation. They want to see someone do it rather than read about it. Go to the Cisco Live Library, search for my name. You'll see that presentation. It's there. So let's talk a little bit about migration options, okay? Migration is the biggest, what I would say, roadblock or potential speed bump that you might have in moving from CUCM ultimately to Webex Calling, okay? This is something that we have been extremely hyper-focused on at Cisco. We've built a lot of tools. We have a lot of third-party company tools that we've helped them build. There's a lot available here, but I think a lot of people get really caught up in the minutia of how ultimately it is. When you think about migration, there's really kind of two major factors. There's the actual data, meaning the configuration for your users and for their devices, and then there's the actual capability of the device and moving the device from one location to the other. Those are the two major steps. I know I'm kind of granulating that and not really putting it I'm putting it extremely simple, but when it's really, you think about it, it is those two very specific steps. From a user data perspective, we have a lot of tools. So if your location is small or your location is really clean, when I say clean, meaning you probably deployed CUCM in the last maybe 7 to 8 years, so you followed a lot of new technology and new deployment tactics, we have tools in basically Control Hub that you can literally do what we call a tarball export out of your CUCM, take those files, dump it in Control Hub, it'll whizzle it around, and it'll say, hey, okay, here's Justin, here's his phone, here's line 1, line 2, so on and so forth. It can do all of that automated. I'd love to tell you that most customers can use that feature. I'd be lying to you if I'd say that. Because I have seen, literally, I used to deploy CUCM for many years prior to coming to Cisco. I will tell you that I have seen 10 systems that when Justin left, they were all set up the same. But once one other CUCM administrator touches a system that I set up, guess what? They're different. And so because that's the case, a lot of people's data is not necessarily what I would call clean. This is when we start using, a lot of times, a third-party option. We have some great partnerships. One of the companies is here. Tuki is here in the they're a European-based company. They're here in the World of Solutions if you want to stop by. Oh, hello. And then, of course, we have other partnerships with other companies like Yarn Lab and a few other ones as well. And so, ultimately, if you're looking for help, these people make your life simple. They built an application. They can help you clean stuff up. They can do cluster to cluster, right? They can actually do cluster consolidation if you had everything in multiple clusters. The price you pay, which is really minimal to get this done, is very valuable. And I would tell you to check out those folks in the World of Solutions, the ones that are here. The second aspect of those is moving your devices. So I'm going to talk about what devices are supported here in Webex Calling here in a minute. But the plain and simple, easy way to put it, it's 7800 and 8800 series phones. If I didn't say anything in those two ranges, more than likely it's not moving to the cloud. And so if you have 78 and 8800 series phones, remember on CUCM they use this firmware that we refer to at Cisco as enterprise firmware. We need to switch the firmware on those phones to what we call multi-protocol phone support, or MPP firmware. Now, I will openly admit, stand here with my hand raised as high as possible and tell you 2 years ago, I'd probably much rather jump off a cliff than try to convert a bunch of phones over. It was that bad. It was really bad. Luckily, I'm here to tell you that not only have we made it super simple, we've even kind of expanded past that. Let me give you a couple of examples here. Number one is, obviously, we can just simply take that export of your phones, we can drop it in Control Hub, and it can automate basically all the licensing pieces and the conversion stuff. And then effectively on those phones, the only thing you have to do is basically repoint it to a new TFTP server. You push out your option 150 on your network or whatever you do, and they'll register the cloud, they'll see that they're supposed to be converted, and they'll convert. That's a manual process, but effectively a very easy one that most network and phone administrators can follow. But let me give you what I call utopia. Utopia is, hey, you've been good and you've deployed cloud-connected UC. If you've deployed the cloud-connected UC product with our CUCM, basically product, and you have your control hub connected, cloud-connected UC can actually tell me all the phones that are physically in your CUCM. So at this point, I can go and say, hey, I'm going to convert Justin and I'm going to convert John this weekend. I go in, I put Justin and John, it shows me Justin and John's phones, I click the box, it sends the command back to CUCM, CUCM overwrites the build file, reboots the phone, and automates the actual upgrade at that point. So I haven't touched anything. Cloud to CUCM to phone, it converts the process automatically. That is available today. That's been actually available for almost a year. Most people don't know that. But if you're looking at how you convert a lot of phones, we have multiple methodologies to do that. There's another session this week by a gentleman named Stephen Fly. He covers a couple of these migration scenarios in much more dirty detail than I do here. Just really quick, I want to also draw your attention to, as I mentioned, I've been talking about the control hub tools. There is a significant amount of APIs if you fancy yourself a programmer. There's everything that we do now, by the way, in Webex Cloud is 100% API driven. We have a policy around here, and we're doing, I'd say we were sticking to the policy, I'll give you a 90%. We bring out an API before we bring out a feature. So the feature that's programmed from Control Hub actually refers to an API. That is very un-Cisco, folks. That's completely against anything this company has ever done before, but it's a very good step in the right direction. Because when you build an API, if I go to a customer that needs customization, here's your API. Do it yourself, right? That's what we're ultimately working on. And so you have the ability, once again, to do Control Hub automated or control manual batch, as well as APIs for that. I'll just show you real quick here, obviously the migration tools that are available. Lots of migration tools, as I mentioned, ability to migrate phones. Obviously, look at it can even run a premise-based, predetermination check. How good is my data? Obviously, we've pushed pretty hard. I'm not going to tell you how many people in my presentation yesterday raised their hand when I asked if they were using Jabber or the Webex app. But that's a whole nother thing that for some reason here in Europe that we need to really work hard on is the Jabber to Webex app migration strategies as well for our customers. But all these things are available here from that standpoint. So real quick, before I do a demo, I want to talk one more thing here, and we'll talk about this. So I mentioned this before. I realize this is a US-based thing, but if you have some US locations, spare me 2 minutes to talk about this real quick. So in the US and Canada, especially in the US, we have these two laws. One's called Kerry's Law, the other one's called the Rape-Bomb Act. Basically, it requires you to have location for wherever any device or any soft client is located, up to and including really about 4,000 square feet is really the requirement, if you really get down to it. But the biggest thing now, of course, with this hybrid work mentality is people, right, that are out and about and using mobile apps, and more specifically, using a desktop app. So 2 things about Cisco. Number 1, when you dial an emergency number from the Webex app on your phone, it will always use your cellular dialer. That's just been our policy from day one. We signed a blood agreement with Apple years ago for them to let us do it, and that's why we're the only people that can do that, by the way, on an iPhone. We have this super secret, friendly relationship with them. But when you dial 911 on your mobile device, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, it's going to go to your cellular modem, or same thing here in Europe, you dial whatever your emergency number is in your area, it's going to use that, right? We have locale capability. Now on your desktop, it's different. So on the Webex app, we have built in, basically through a partnership, and when you go with cloud, you get this service for free in the US and Canada. We have a partnership with a company called Red Sky, and so basically, your Webex app is very much aware of where it's at. If you roll into your local Starbucks in the United States, turn your laptop on and connect to Wi-Fi, the Webex app goes, where are you? You type in the address of Starbucks, you hit save, it goes great. So if you accidentally call, well, you would probably purposely call 911 at that point, maybe had a bad coffee, right? You're a little upset, something, whatever the case is. Guess what? The call is going to go to the 911 center there locally, and they're going to call the local fire department, and they're going to know where you're at. That's the law now in the United States. So we have that capability, and if you do have locations that you ultimately deploy in the US or Canada, you will get this capability as well with Webex Calling multi-tenant and dedicated instance. So they're both supported. So I want to do a quick demo here of the user side stuff before I get going. So let me just log back in here real quick. I want to show you, and it's really hard for folks because they really just never get an idea of how, I hate to say it, stupidly simple it is to configure this stuff. So check this out. I have my laptop here. I'm showing you an org that belongs to me. This is one of my demo orgs. Frankly, it's the org where all my family is connected to. So yes, you're going to see we are horribly addicted to pugs in our family. So I apologize. You're going to see pictures of dogs. That's the way it is, but that's who we are here in the Jordan family. We're a couple of pug people. I've been told that pugs are very popular in Germany. Am I right? No? Do you know what a pug is from a dog perspective? Anybody ever seen Men in Black? The movie, right? The dog that talks, that's a pug. They're very cute and ugly all at the same time. I'll throw a picture up before we're done of Winston. So here we go. So this is my control hub. Now, real quick, just to lay the foundation here. This is integrated with Google, okay? I've done the Google integration, so we are G Suite integrated here. So when I add a user, I don't have to worry about verification or anything, right? Because guess what? What did I do? I claimed my domain, right? So I told Cisco I own that domain, and I did the Google integration. So guess what? Everything's magic at this point. There's no super secret, triple dog verify, set up your password, whatever, right? So when I create a user, when they go to log in the first time, guess where they're going to be sent to log in? Google. So that means I don't ever have to manage a password because that person's Gmail password or their Docs or Sheets or all that other Google stuff, that's their password. So I'm out of the password business. But pretty simple. Simple, simple, simple. So I'm going to show you how long it takes for me to do it. I click the Manage Users. I click the Manually Add User. I come down here. I'm going to add Dennis Jordan, his email. All I do is hit the plus button. I'm going to go ahead and hit the next key. I simply choose how I want it. I'm going to give him advanced messaging. We are a Webex family, so he's going to get the full suite. And more specifically, what we've been talking today is calling. So I'm going to give him Webex Calling with a professional license. I go ahead and click the next key. Now, it's very simple. I need to put him in a location, okay? Dennis is in Merced. I'm going to give him one of my phone numbers, right, that's available in my pool that I've established. So I'll give him this number, and I'm going to give him an extension. We'll go ahead and give him an extension 3000, okay? He has a calling plan. See that? So he can make calls out. I go ahead and click the next key. I click the Add User button, and that's it. At this point, Dennis has received an email welcoming him to WebEx, giving him the link to download the app from the App Store, or, of course, download the app to his desktop. The other thing that he's going to get, effectively, is at this point, if I don't need to give him a physical device, guess what? He's done. That's it. And once again, do I have to worry about his username and password? Nope. Because the minute he goes to log in, guess what it's going to do? It's going to refer him to Google IDP. He's going to log in, and he's ready to go. That's it. I was able to create that user in less than 20 seconds. Anybody want to tell me how long it takes to do that in CUCM? I can tell you, and I'm fast. It's 8 screens and 47 mouse clicks. Anybody, I'm serious. Remember what configuring Jabber was like in a CSF file? All the device association? This is where magic exists. This is where utopia is for me. Now, I want to show you one more thing. Let's say I did want to give Dennis a phone, or Dennis had a phone. Now, of course, in the WebEx calling world, we can do things 2 different ways. If you like the old school MAC address method and you're down for always wanting to make sure what those 12 digits are, you can do that. I still have my scanner. I have my barcode scanner from the good old days, right? Remember you used to get the pallets of phones and beep, 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 beep. That was me. But we do things a little differently in WebEx calling. I sent my dad a phone, okay? My dad plugged that phone in. It registered to Cisco's cloud. It goes, I don't know who I am. give me an activation code. So I'm going to come here to devices real quick. I'm going to click add device. I'm going to say it's for personal usage, because it is. I'll go ahead and click next. It says, who do you want to assign it to? Dennis Jordan. So I'm going to click Dennis. Bring up Dennis here. Click next. Cisco IP phone. I sent Dennis an 8845. There it is. And once again, MAC address? Nope. Activation code. Click the next key. It sends him this code. It gives me this code. All Dennis does is walk up to his phone. He types in these numbers. 2 minutes later, guess what he has? A desk phone. Oh, by the way, that's associated to his user, so he can now start remotely controlling his phone right from the app if he wants to. Remember what that configuration takes in CUCM? That's rough too. These are all things that we have now to make your life easy. And this is why ultimately when I tell people you're going to move to the cloud, I challenge people to do one very important thing. I say take a step back. Look at your users. Create what we call a persona. So a persona is what a specific set of users might fit into. So in a hospital, a nurse is a persona, a doctor's a persona, an administrator is a persona. Look at your personas and then decide what product and solution makes sense for those people the best. Because I shouldn't be putting everybody on CUCM just because that's what I'm used to. When you actually come to the cloud, guess what we can do? If you have CUCM requirements for some of your users, we'll do it there. But if you have regular, good old-fashioned mobile workers that are coming in and out, that need simple hot desking, that need these things, put them on multi-tenant. Because guess what? We connect those two in the cloud automatically from a dialing perspective and a PSTN perspective. We can do that and no one else can. Cisco's the only company that can actually do that. So this, by the way, just showing you here, is the simple process. All I did was created a user and I created a device. That's it. That's all it takes to add a user to multi-tenant. Now, do we have bulk ways to do that? Of course, we have the good old-fashioned standard comma delineated file. Want to upload 1,000 at a time? We can do that. Or better yet, we can drive it from your directory services, whether that's Active Directory on-premise using something called Directory Connector, or if you're already cloud-based using Microsoft Azure Directory or Okta or some other SCIM-based platform, we can push those in too. We can literally automate it that if you create a new user, you put them in the right security group, it gets pushed over, they have a license assigned, an account assigned. Even if your PeopleSoft or whatever pushes over, or Workday pushes over, right, a new user and automatically specifies the phone number they want, we'll assign them that number automatically. User will get an email, that's it. So we can automate and make things so much easier than we've ever done it before previously on CUCM. Head back here to our PowerPoint. So let's talk about some calling basics and some simple PSTN. So when you get your Webex calling, there's going to be what I call the defining moment of your system. Now this is very important, and this is one of those major, hopefully you take it away from me today, stories that I'm going to give you. It's very important that when you set up your first location, you set it up where you want your data to be located. So if you're here in Europe, we have 2 different locations for 2 different data centers, right? We have the EU data centers and we have the UK data centers. So if you accidentally say, I'm going to do, I bought Webex Calling, this is great, but the first site I'm going to do is that site I have in Boston, Massachusetts. So you put in Boston, Massachusetts in the first time setup wizard, guess where we're going to locate your platform, here 2 cents for? In the United States. So always remember, the first location needs to be where your expectation is around data sovereignty and location. That's very, very important, okay? So you always put your headquarters in. Even if you're not going to deploy a single phone at headquarters, you still put it there because that's effectively where we're going to tie your data sovereignty to. So real quick, you're going to go through these things. We do require a legitimate, real, and the term is actually called LexisNexis. If you've never heard of this platform, that's the magic platform that when you type in an address and it auto-fills it out in like a form, guess where it's pulling it from? LexisNexis. So you're going to put in your address as long as it's in LexisNexis. We're going to associate that. Of course, that's how we ultimately associate emergency calling, those kinds of things, to your account. So you'll have to set up all of that functionality the first time. So you'll put in your address, your country, your region, all that other good stuff, and effectively it'll be very easy to be set up. But just remember, always put in your headquarters location, or effectively the most important thing to you, where you want your data effectively to be stored. Because the way Webex calling works, that is your home country. While we have media nodes all over the world to support your calling, it's still based on your home country of origin. Your location, your primary location, is where your data sovereignty is. So from a location perspective, just to set up a few things, obviously you can see you can create a new location. You can put in your addresses. So this would be if you're going to create another site, another location, another place in another country, whatever the case is. Of course, once it's created, you'll actually see it inside the location list. The other thing that you'll notice here on the other side is you can ultimately, at that point then, once the location is created, you can go in and configure all of the appropriate services inside that location, which is really great. And then, of course, the last thing that you do in that location is you choose your PSTN type. So here's another little tricky thing. We can only convert between certain PSTN types. So if you choose one type, and then you decide you want to change, guess what we're doing? We're creating a new location and we're moving the users over to that location. We can't change PSTN types from specific ones to specific ones. So if you are going to start, let's say with a local gateway, because it's going to take too long, or it's going to take a little while to order numbers or whatever, we'll start with local gateways, because local gateways are trunks now. They're actually not location types. So they're trunks, and trunks can be used throughout the whole system. I showed you that a little bit earlier. So those are no problem, but converting, let's say, from a Cisco calling plan to a cloud-connected partner calling plan, we are not going to be able to do that. You're going to need to be able to have, if you need to do that, just remember, we'll have to do what we call user move. And before, just until about 6 months ago, we couldn't even move users between locations. Now we can. So that problem has basically fixed itself. But just remember, you will ultimately choose the PSTN plan that you would want for this specific area, okay? The next biggest mistake that 90% of the people make is they don't assign a main number to their location. Let me tell you what doesn't work if you don't assign a main number. Voicemail doesn't turn on for any user in that location, because there's no back door, there's no operator, there's no exit. So just remember, no matter what, you must assign a number to a location. There must be a main number associated to it. So some people put in blanks. They put in, if they don't have a DID and they want to just, they're afraid of it, they put in a local gateway and they put in fake numbers. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'm hoping that you have a main number, because you're a business and there's a main number for the location. However, the main number technically could be on the location and shared with the receptionist. That's possible too, right? All those things are great. But just remember, without a main number, you have no voicemail. You have no intricate routing. All of those things effectively, the minute you put in a number and hit save, all that stuff magically turns on. So always make sure you put in your main number, okay? So from an options and best practices, I showed you my user creation flow, right? I showed you that. But let me talk just real quickly. So obviously the directory is very important. If you have never really done security groups inside your directory platform and your IDP platform, good opportunity to do that. If you literally had a Webex calling user group, it makes it so much easier to drop a user in there and automate those processes I talked about. Of course, you do have the ability, as I mentioned before, to create using a common delineated file or a typical kind of bulk admin tool type of update file. You can do it one at a time. I showed you that, right? And then the other thing that you can do as well is you can edit in bulk. So a gentleman actually asked me yesterday in our class, hey, I need to go back through and change one simple thing on all my users, but I have about 500 of those users that I don't want to change, and guess what? They're all in the same location. So unfortunately, the best thing for him to do is just simply run the export. It dumps the file out, shows all the features. He goes in that one column he wants to change, he changes them all, he saves the file, and he sends it right back up, and it'll make the change to that one specific attribute for you. So there are lots of different ways to do it. I could have probably shown him how to do it via API, but it would take twice as long for me to teach Postman and all the other stuff to him than it would for him just to literally download the file, make the change, and put it back up. But there's a lot of capabilities there from that standpoint. So if you plan very well in these migrations, and by the way, this is why Cisco does have a service that we sell called Webex Setup Assist. If you want to migrate from CUCM to Webex, we actually have a group that you can use that is actual Cisco employees, like real Cisco people, that can assist you in the migration. They know all of these best practices that I've just mentioned. They have all the software to do the extraction and all that other stuff. They use all of these things together. So if you are looking for someone to help you, it's a really actually an inexpensive service. It's a one-time fee per user. We can actually help you do the bulk of that heavy lifting too, if that's something that you really would like us to do. So I did the user creation, so I'm going to skip this. I did the demo a little earlier. I wanted to do it earlier in the flow. So let's talk about a couple more small things. We got one more demo, and we're finished here in about 12 minutes. So first of all, devices. So as I mentioned before, just the 78 and the 8800 series, right? Of course, we do support calling, Webex Calling natively as well on all of our desk series, room series endpoints, as well as a lot of our Webex board pros and all that other good stuff, right? So they can actually have a phone number on it, right? Not just a URI dialing, they can have a regular phone number on it. So if you want to do conference calls and all that other stuff, you can do it. So all those are there. We have a product, until just recently, we didn't support it on CUCM. We do now, but we have a really great DECT product. So if you like wireless devices, but you don't want to use it on Wi-Fi and you want something that actually works, we have an entire DECT wireless platform that works with the cloud. And then, of course, if you are an analog user or analog heavy environment, we have a full analog suite. I will tell you, the analog transition and migration is one of the more pain points for our customers. This is a bad thing because, frankly, the VG224, the VG310, VG320, most people didn't realize that those voice gateways were actually built on previous generation Cisco routers. So when you bought a VG310, it was actually built on a 2900 series router platform, even though at that time we were selling ISR 4300s. So because of that, they don't have the TLS 1.2 capability that you would need to go to the cloud. So one of the things, by the way, in Webex Calling multi-tenant, everything's encrypted. There is no non-encrypted. Everything's encrypted. So everything must support TLS 1.2, support specific AES ciphers. All of those things are important, right? So when you think of connecting anything to it, first thing you should ask yourself, does it support encryption? Because if it doesn't, as a third party, guess what? It's probably not going to work. But all the devices here that are there, we have, just so you know, if you haven't heard, we did just finally bring out 2 more new gateways. We brought out the VG410-24 and the VG410-48. So we actually do have a Webex Calling supported 24-port and 48-port gateway. So your good old-fashioned standard single Amphenol connector or dual Amphenol connector. So of course, we also have a high-density one, which is the 420. So we have all of the sizes now of analog gateways that were supported on CUCM. We have them available now as well for Webex Calling. So that part of the portfolio is complete. I'm going to talk real quick about device management. So we actually opened up about a year ago what we call third-party devices. So this includes products like from Polycom and Yealink, right? So if you're coming off of a BroadSoft-based platform, right? Or you're coming back from Zoom Phone or 8x8 or RingCentral. We have support for those devices. So we have native support for those devices. We don't turn it on automatically. You send an email to the PM group and they'll turn on the access for that devices. Now, it's kind of rudimentary. You get multi-line support, you get a few things, but effectively it's there. Now, we have added a new solution with a third party called Phonism recently, so that if you don't see one of those physically listed Poly or Yealink devices, let's say you bought 500 audio codes phones, you can go to Phonism, and you have to pay them a small fee per phone, but basically they can bring in just about any other third-party device that you could imagine that supports TLS 1.2, and they can do the automated configuration, device management, as well as configuration management for you. So all of these things are available now, and so we kind of support this. So you'll see that we support things like Axis door boxes and 2-in door boxes and Algo speaker adapters and Atlas Sound this and single wire that. And so all those weird little crazy little special things you might have tied to CUCM, probably about 90% of those we support with Webex Calling now. We'd have to look at them. Some of them might need to be updated to support the TLS 1.2 requirement, but it's more than likely that we can support that. So just realize that we do have what we call partner managed, customer managed, and as well as third-party device managed support in Webex Calling today. The last thing I would mention here is, like I said, the partner managed standpoint. So some of our partners, right, that have been operating, in the past, they've basically operated BroadSoft platforms, right? You might be a carrier here, and you've done that. You can continue to manage your devices that for your users in a partner managed standpoint as well. So we allow you to basically play middleman. So you basically can create the config files for the devices. You use APIs to talk to us, right, to pull configurations, authentication strings, all that other good stuff out. And so we do support this as well. So for a lot of our larger customers, more specifically usually service providers that want to continue to do partner managed devices, we support that as well. So a lot of great options there. Don't want to talk too much about it, but ultimately we can do that for you as well. So a couple small things here. Going to show you some calling analytics. I'm just going to give you a real quick preview, but just show you the screen here. Won't take too much time here because I'm going to actually show it to you here in a second. But the really neat thing about Webex Calling is our ability to really be very proactive in the management of health of our voice platform. Remember in CUCM, if you wanted to have any kind of call analytics, you had to deploy another box. And the box Cisco made was a pain in the butt to deploy and manage and keep up to date. So a lot of folks went third party, right? You went to things like IR Prognosis and some of these other platforms. Let me show you real quick here what we do here ultimately in Control Hub. So this is another Control Hub here. This is one of the demo systems, so I don't want to try to trick you into think I'm doing something crazy here, but I'm going to come over here to the analytics button right here. And then inside the analytics, this is, of course, the analytics platform for all Webex services. So we have meetings, messaging, all the other good stuff. But I'm going to hit the calling tab. You'll notice here I have both multi-tenant and dedicated instance, but I'm looking at multi-tenant today. So as you can see, I have a nice, as I like to say, executives like nice big colored graphs. So I have nice big colored graphs for the executives, but it also helps me too. Obviously, I'm looking at the total calls, how many were good, were bad. I can look at my quality trend. I can look at them by location. I can look at them by time, by endpoint type, all that other good stuff. But all of this stuff is great, but I really like to use it from a troubleshooting perspective. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the red, and I'm going to apply this, and this is going to put a filter. This is now filtering on only things that were bad, that the system determined as a bad call. So I'm going to scroll down here again. You'll see 318 of the calls were bad. Obviously, they all had a really bad packet loss. They're extremely high jitter from a latency perspective. But I'm going to come down here, and here's my favorite part. I have the worst offenders list, as I like to call it. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to take a look. Let's take a look at Dakota here. So I'm going to click on Dakota's name, and I'm going to go now to the troubleshooting section inside the Control Hub. So pretty important because in the past, driving down to this, if someone calls me on a help desk ticket, I had a bad call. Well, in the old days, we'd search by number. What number did you call? How'd you do this? No, those days are gone. All this stuff is very easy. It can be correlated and looked at in a very simplistic standpoint. Well, this call right here was a phone call, right? It was poor. So let's actually bring up that actual call now. At this point, I can actually see the entire call leg. I can see where the call was made. If the ISP is doing reverse IP lookup, I can see what ISP it was. All of these pieces are there. It is even giving me a couple of insights. It's saying, hey, Justin, hey, guess what? ICE didn't work here. So this tried to do a cloud-to-cloud call, right? So this thing took the long way around, as we like to say. And look at the media scenario. The network looked really bad. So I can come down here and actually highlight this. Obviously, this user, Marty, had 100% packet loss coming from Dakota. So these are the kinds of things, and this kind of detail is really powerful in being able to really just get down into the dirty of what's going on.